Alright, game 2 of Inzektors vs. Dark Worlds. Inzektor player gets loser's rights, so he starts first. He plays a pot of duality, and he adds his dragonfly to hand. He sets a card face down, and he sets a card in his back row, and passes turn. Dark World player plays Dark World Dealings. And the card he discards is Snow. The Inzektor player discards his Hornet. And the Dark World player searches for... I believe he searches for a Gates with his Snow effect. Yeah, there it is. He searches for his Gates. He activates his Gates, removing his Snow, and pitching a Brow. He draws a card with Brow's effect. He sets 2 cards in back row and passes turn. Inzektor player, turn 2. Inzektor player activates MST. And he snags a Torrential Tribute from the Dark World player. Then the Inzektor player summons his Dragonfly, and Dark World player activates Skill Drain. The Inzektor player flips over his face down, which is a Hornet, and he declares attack with the Hornet, and declares an attack with his Dragonfly. He looks at his options carefully, and instead of going for Leviathan this game, he decides to try for something different. The Inzektor player decides to overlay into a Acid Golem. And he sets a face down and passes turn. Dark World player activates Dark Hole. And he activates his Gates effect, removing his Brow from play. He pitches his Snow and searches for a Grapha. He activates his second Gates from his hand. He pitches his Grapha. He removes a Fiend and pitches his Grapha, targeting the Call of the Haunted. He activates Drag down to the grave. The Inzector player has a Mystic Tomato and a Centipede. The Dark World player has a Brow, a Gold, and a Silver. The Inzector player decides to choose the Brow. Actually, he chooses the Gold. My bad. So Gold's effect activates, and the Inzector player activates Solemn Warning. The Dark World player summons his Brow and bounces it to special summon his Grappa. He uses Grappa to attack his opponent directly and pass his turn. Inzector player draws. He activates Heavy Storm. Dark World player chains Dark Smog to the effect of Heavy Storm. And he removes from play a Hornet from the Inzector player and pitches his Silva, which special summons. The Inzector player summons his Centipede and brings the Hornet out. He uses his Hornet's effect and targets Grappa, sending it to the graveyard. Which I believe was a misplay. He should have targeted the Silver first. Anyways, he searches for his Gigamantis, and actually, this was a really good choice, because he attaches the Gigamantis onto the Centipede and then attacks the Silver. Life points are a little bit off on this match. It's actually 2,000 to 5,400. The Dark World player summons the Dark World, bounces back and summons his Grappa, and attacks the Centipede. Inzector player enters his turn. He sets a card face down and passes turn. Dark World player draws. He sets a face down. Actually, he decides to summon it. He declares attack with Grappa, and he declares attack with his, I believe that's that's a Trance Archfiend. The Inzector player sets a face down and passes turn. Oh, I don't think that's a Trance Archfiend. That might actually be a Brow. However, the Dark World player top decks his MST and attacks her again. That wraps up game